It's a beautiful day in Baton Rouge, and we're celebrating the 10th anniversary of the Louisiana Book Festival here on the grounds of the state capitol in the state library where we stand right now. Really a celebration of Louisiana literature and our love for words in this great state. We've got over 200 authors here this year and a number of interesting programs. The festival is considered one of the best book festivals in America. In fact, the authors voted this the top book festival in America a couple of years ago. So we treat them special, obviously, when they come to Louisiana like we do virtually anybody, but it's really an intimate festival. You have an opportunity to interact with the authors. The sessions are smaller. You're not in a big auditorium speaking to a huge crowd. You're in the committee meeting rooms in the state capitol, and it's a great experience for lovers of literature to be able to hear about how the spoken word is put down on paper and how the creative process develops for these outstanding writers.
There's stuff for everybody. There's the children's pavilion, lots of children's activities. We're incorporating teen activities because, we really want to get them engaged at those teenage years to be lifelong readers. Music, food, local bands, Ben Bell and the Stardust Boys, Circa Amore. We've got Mary Gauthier. So lots to do for everybody. It really highlights that special thing about Louisiana, that we're very unique and people want to write about us. We have word shops the day before the festival that teach writing classes, and everything we do with young people is to engage them to become lifelong readers. So everything we do is about building this culture of literacy that we think is so important for Louisiana. I'm Rebecca Hamilton, the State Librarian for Louisiana, and welcome to the 10th Annual Louisiana Book Festival and the Louisiana Writer Award Ceremony. The Louisiana Writer Award is given annually by the Louisiana Center for the Book in the State Library to recognize the outstanding contribution of the literary and intellectual life of Louisiana, exemplified by the recipient's body of work. Past recipients include poets Yusef Kumanyaka and William J. Smith, historian Carl Brasso, novelist James Lee Burke, Ernest Gaines, Shirley Ann Grau, Elmore Leonard, Tim Gautreaux, Valerie Martin, James Wilcox, and John Bigonnet, scholar Lewis P. Simpson, and children's author William Joyce. We are pleased this year to add to this honor roll Louisiana author Christine Wiltz as our 14th honoree. To be born in New Orleans is simply a terrific piece of luck, but then every person you meet anywhere has a story they'd like to tell you, Chris has said. In New Orleans, they don't hesitate. This is a city where creativity flourishes, from the downtown art scene to the dialogues you overhear in the grocery store. To present the 2013 Louisiana Writer Award, I'm pleased to introduce Lieutenant Governor Jay Darden.
Well, thank you, Rebecca, and let me first thank you and Jim for the great job that you do every year to make this Louisiana Book Festival the success that it is and the attraction that it is for people from all over Louisiana and really all over the country. So Jim, Rebecca, thanks for what you do. One of our former winners of this award, and several of them are here today, they tend to come back and want to continue to be a part of this book festival. One of our previous winners, James Lee Burke, is one of my favorite authors, and he had an interesting way of describing New Orleans before the storm. It's not quite as funny now as it was before the storm, but in one of his novels he said, New Orleans is not a city, it's an outdoor insane asylum situated on top of a giant sponge. But I think more descriptively and more beautifully after the storm, he said Louisiana was like a piece of South America that was sawed off of its moorings and blown by trade winds across the Caribbean until it affixed itself to the southern rim of the United States. And our winner this year has literally made a life and a passion and a career out of writing about her native city, New Orleans, just as so many of our Louisiana writers have written about their love and their ability to capture everything that makes Louisiana special and makes Louisiana unique. Christine Wiltz is the author of 5 novels, all set in New Orleans. She's also written numerous articles and essays that have appeared in the New Yorker, the Los Angeles Times, and Louisiana Life. After she read Raymond Chandler's The Long Goodbye, she was inspired to write about New Orleans the way that Chandler wrote about Los Angeles. The result was The Killing Circle, her first book writing endeavor that grew into a mystery trilogy that also includes A Diamond Before You Die and The Emerald Lizard. Christine's novel Glass House is based on the true story of a police officer who was murdered near one of the most violent housing projects in New Orleans. Another one of her works, in fact, I have to say my favorite, I hate to admit this, but The Last Madam, A Life in the New Orleans Underworld, is based upon interviews with more than 100 people, including Norma Wallace, who was the operator of the infamous New Orleans in French Quarter House of Ill Repute. Her latest novel is Shoot the Money, and obviously all of her efforts capture the essence of what New Orleans is all about, what makes New Orleans unique in a setting that is classic Louisiana and classic New Orleans. And today she joins a long list of extremely talented Louisianians who have written about their state, written about life and life's experiences in general, and brought a great deal of pride not only to Louisiana but to the American literary scene. So it's my honor and privilege to present the 2013 Louisiana Writer Award to Christine Wiltz. And going with it as an honorarium, which I know she will be happy to receive, as well as this beautiful plaque, which I will now present her. Christine, congratulations. Kind of heavy, so.
It is. Let me not drop it. I was very excited because my publisher thought it would be a great idea for us to have the logo of the Louisiana Book Festival put on the cover. We have a new cover to celebrate this event of Shoot the Money, and to put this beautiful logo on the cover. So it's there, and I love it. I am beyond thrilled. This is an award that I know is extremely prestigious. Ever since Ernest Gaines was the first recipient of it, it has become an award to want, covet, everything. And I was really surprised that I got it. Absolutely delighted, although Jim Davis was on the phone with me saying, Chris, are you still there? And to receive it from the Lieutenant Governor, who I admire and think has done a wonderful job for all of us writers and artists in this state, it's a thrill, total thrill. I'm exhilarated by it. Joining a list of writers that are pretty awesome, and also it means a lot to me personally to be known as a Louisiana writer. I never wanted to be a Southern writer. I either wanted to be a Louisiana writer or a New Orleans writer. Either of those, both of those. And I feel like this really does it. I'm now officially a Louisiana writer.
What is so special about Louisiana to you in the writing?
Well, I think this place has a charm and a character about it that is, as many places are, unique. Mm-hmm. But, for example, Southern Louisiana, which is the part of it I know the best. I know a little bit about the North. But one of the reasons I didn't want to be a Southern writer is because this part of the South, to me, is nothing like any other part of the South I've ever seen. It's got its own customs, and its people are they're different. They do things differently. They have other interests. They've got amazing cultural traditions, and I think that that's a real gift to a writer, to be born in a place that you grow up knowing this. It'd be very hard to learn it all and to understand it well enough to write about it if you just kind of walked into it as an adult, I think. I wouldn't even want to try.
Well, what books are you reading right now?
Oh, what am I reading right now? Well, actually, I'm reading for a contest, so I'm reading a bunch of debut novel mysteries. But I try to keep up with the books that are coming out of Louisiana, especially the writers that I know and love here. Mm-hmm. I really enjoy that, and then just keeping up with fiction in general. Let's see, what was the last one I read? Rage Against Dying by a woman named Becky Masterson. But it's not a Louisiana novel.
What you're seeing today, one of the first opportunities we've been able to show it in the state of Louisiana, is the St. John's Bible. This is the first handwritten, hand-illuminated Bible commissioned in 500 years. And it was commissioned by the Benedictine monks at St. John's Abbey at St. John's University in Collegeville, Minnesota. And it was art directed and written by Donald Jackson, who is a world-famous calligrapher and chief scribe to Queen Elizabeth, and again, considered the world's foremost calligrapher.
What was the idea about making a Bible such as this?
It's a powerful story. It starts with the monks at St. John's who were looking for a way to celebrate the coming of the new millennium. And they had a wonderful relationship with Donald Jackson, whose lifelong dream was, as a calligrapher, was to handwrite scripture. So he presented the idea of commissioning him to handwrite the Bible to the monks at St. John's. And they prayed on it for 3 years and came to consensus and decided, yes, we're going to have you do it. And it took 15 years to do.
Wow, that's an enormous amount of time and effort and creativity. Who decided on all the artwork that is also in this Bible?
It's a great question. It's an interesting process. You had a group at St. John's who is a committee of illumination and text, which is made up of biblical scholars, art historians, and they came up with some of the concepts behind the illuminations, the big ideas that they wanted to make sure they got across from an artistic perspective in the Bible. And then they presented those ideas to Donald Jackson, who's the artist, and they went back and forth for a long time, sort of, what the heck are these guys talking about? Because I'm not a theologian, I'm an artist. It was a sharing of ideas, and then ultimately Donald came up with the art behind the theology.
The story is about a man from upper New York, a very sophisticated upper middle class artist, had a business and a family with 2 daughters, extremely happy, and a very gifted violinist. And he was top of the society. He had very good friends, and he went to Washington to play, and he brought the house down. And 2 young men came, and they had a wonderful time and a wonderful dinner, and they had a glass of brandy, and he woke up in a whole other place, chained. And then he was kidnapped and sold into slavery, where he spent 12 years as a slave. And he witnessed which is wonderful. He was able to write. He started with a piece of wood and some Beatles ink, and he finally wrote this 12 years later, the book. He finally wrote his notes and became rescued 12 years later. And he lived to tell that story. And Sue Eakin, Frank Eakin, my partner's mother, got all that stuff together to make the book. And then, for some wonderful divine providence, I was called to do the audio book. And it took quite a while. I had to take a lot of breaks because From Roots was one thing, but this was another. So having told that story, here I am to talk about the audiobook of 12 Years a Slave, the book itself, my book, An Actor and a Gentleman, and I'm almost finished with the audiobook of that. Found a new thing to do, and it's a wonderful thing to say that was then, this is now. Now God has seen fit for we need each other desperately to be together to save its planet.
She found that book when she was 12 years old. Her dad she hopped in the truck with her dad in 1931, and they drove from his a small planter from Compromise Plantation near Cheneyville to Dr. Hayes at Oak Hall Plantation. Dr. Hayes was the big guy, okay? And they went in, and Dr. Hayes said to my mom, "Young lady, you're going to be bored sitting here listening to 2 old men. How would you like to come up to the library and read a book?" So he pulled off 12 Years a Slave, the original 1853 edition, and it ended up, Mom made it her life's work.
Wow, that's a fascinating story because I know it did take her through many years of her life. And what really drove her to get this republished?
Well, Mom, the first modern edition, she co-edited in 1968 with a gentleman named Joe Loxton. And then with another 40 years of research, Mom sort of became the source of all things Solomon Artha. And at age 88, she wanted a final definitive edition with the benefit of all her decades of research, and that's what we've recently published. As far as the reason, but the thing that drove her, Mom loved Louisiana history, and she loved to write about Louisiana history. and her focus was black history. And there were very few people, researchers, that were, diving into black history at that time. And she felt that I guess she felt it was her duty and it was her calling. And she felt it was a vital history that must be told, and that it helped connect the dots between some of the issues that we see today and history. And it was the beginning of some of the problems in our society that we see today. And by connecting the dots, she felt that perhaps we'd have a greater understanding and be able to come together to work for a better future.
Now they drop me off at the front gate. I guess they got better things to do. Number 47, she's a good one. Number 63 sings like a bird.
Well, I'm a singer-songwriter. I travel around the world playing the songs that I've written. It's my job to get to people's hearts. So I'm a heart worker.
Tell us a little bit about the music that you're performing here today.
Story songs. It fits at a book festival. Story songs, yeah. Well, I love books. Language is my favorite. Words are important to me as a songwriter.
Tell us, what advice do you have to someone that might be interested in writing, particularly writing songs?
Study the greats. Always study the greats.
He was a mountain of a man over 6'4", shoulder so wide barely fit through the door, bigger than high, let the big hole in her.
I have been a musician all my life, singer, songwriter, performer, actress, and this is the first time that I've contributed to a book. So I have a short story in the Schubernan Anthology, which is a collection of short stories by Southern writers. We've also, there's a big music component to this project, and so I have produced a companion CD. So we have a beautiful CD that's a combination of spoken word, authors reading excerpts from their short stories, and I've created these little soundtrack music beds that go underneath the spoken word, and then it kind of flows right into some provocative song by a Southern singer-songwriter. So it's a really, really interesting project that has, it feels like it's opened up a whole new universe to me. There is a live incarnation of the Schubernan Project that kind of includes every fabulous thing about the arts that I love, music, theater, and spoken word. And it's all staged. There are about 12 of us on stage. There's a band, singer-songwriters, book authors who are reading. Some of the pieces of the stories that involve dialogue, like between different characters, we actually are playing out in a scene fashion where one writer plays one character, another writer plays another character. So we're kind of taking elements of these stories and making them almost like you would do a scene study where we're acting them out. It's really different and interesting. I think it's not like anything else that's happening.
No, I came to it relatively late. I was into my 20s when I started dabbling with it. What brought me to it was reading a book. It was a James Baldwin book. I remember explicitly that was just so powerful that I put the book down and thought, wow, you can do this with words. And it was something I tried to emulate, it inspired me to try, and I can't not write anymore.
A few months back, I was asked to be a part of the Schubernan Anthology, and I didn't have a story. But then I found a baby shoe, and they ended up taking a picture of it and putting it on the cover of the Schubernan Anthology. So my baby shoe's on the cover. How about that? I keep pinching myself and asking my wife, "Have I died and gone to heaven?" How about this? Somewhere where we have a festival for books. I'm used to doing it for songs because I make up songs, and books are my greatest passion.
Tell us a little bit about the book that you're talking about here today.
Well, we'll probably talk about all of them. A trilogy of books on family. all over but the Shoutin', Ava's Man, and The Prince of Frogtown. And talk about writing about people you care about, people you're scared of, people that shape who you are.
What are the keys to successful writing as you found them?
Well, if you're writing about family, then you need to not be afraid to do a love story if that's what it calls for, but also not be afraid to write about the fist fights and the knife fights and the sometimes gun fights that result from growing up in the foothills of the Appalachians.
Obviously, if you watch the show, you know that our faith is a big part of who we are. And in fact, you know, the story's been told now that, you know, when A&E first approached us about the show, you know, my dad was like, I don't think this will work. You know, I don't think that they're going to care about the what bearded rednecks do up here in West Monroe, Louisiana. Of course, he was wrong. He did say, unless the Almighty's behind it, it'll never work. And he famously held up his Bible and asked the producers, he said, is this going to be able to be in this show? And they said, Phil, if that's a part of your family's life, then it's in the show. And he said, well, if it's not in, I'm not in. And so that's kind of was the beginning point of our show, and that's why it's a big part of our lives.
What I always talk about, faith, family, and ducks. That seems to be our family motto, and excited about getting to do the Duck Commander devotional. So we're going to be talking about the book, sort of how it came together, and a little bit of the family.
Tell us a little bit where the ideas for the book came from.
Well, you know, I was in ministry 22 years, and so, you know, when I came over to Duck Commander a year and a half ago, I was the perfect one to put together something spiritual, you know. This is kind of the core of our faith, and so I basically got all of the devotional ideas from the family. We got some of our favorite verses in there, some good, funny Robertson stories, and we put those together in our 365-day devotional book. So I think people are going to love it. It's going to be a real inspiration.
What's your reaction to the success so far?
Well, we're as surprised as anybody. You know, we're a bunch of bearded rednecks up in North Louisiana, and the fact that millions of people now follow us all over the country is surprising. But at the same time, it's encouraging, and kind of gives us a sense that we have a very good purpose to try to keep them along. So I think that's good.
It's a book called The Tilted World, co-written with my wife. It's set in Prohibition in the flood of 1927 in the Mississippi Delta, about two revenue agents who find an orphan baby and try to find a mother for him. The mother they find is actually the county's best moonshiner. So imagine, the sparks will fly from there.
It's a great Southern story, and Tommy and I were interested in the story, fascinated by the flood and why more people didn't know about it. Of course, thinking about it after Katrina, and then we wrote a novel that tried to bring some of its concerns to life.
That story, like you said, is not as well known as it should be. How did you research that to get all the information you needed?
Well, we researched it in the ways you'd guess, for starters, which is to say John M. Barry's amazing nonfiction book, Rising Tide, was really useful to us, of course. All the historians' accounts were useful. But when it actually come to the writing, you know, I'd have to say the things that were most useful were the physical things of going to the site in Mississippi where the levee broke, Mounds Landing Crevasse, and going to the Greenville Historical Museum and the Flood Museum, and also researching first-person accounts, because the historians would summarize the events and use statistics, and they help you get a sense of the overall events. But really, women writing letters to their sisters were the best things, because they were telling things that they saw in their language, and it helped train the ear to get back into the 1927 way of speaking and the Southern expressions that were so beautiful.
I'm the author of The Little Way of Ruthie Lemming, and it's a memoir about my sister Ruthie, who died of cancer at the end of 2011. And she and I had grown up in St. Francisville, Louisiana, in the country. I could not wait to get out of there. I'm not a country boy. She was a country girl. I wanted to get to the city as fast as I could, and we both had a good childhood, but we separated when I was a teenager, and we didn't really understand each other. I admired the life she had. She stayed in our hometown. She got a degree from LSU in teaching and taught middle school there, and married her high school sweetheart, raised her kids right across the road from where we grew up. Meanwhile, I was a journalist. I lived and worked in Washington and New York City and Dallas, traveled all over the world, and I thought that was going to be my life. And then at the age of 40, she received a terminal cancer diagnosis with 3 children. and it changed all of our lives. But Ruthie was this rock during the 19 months she lived. It was a time of bright sadness for her. She showed so much love and faith and hope throughout her struggle. And when we came down from Philadelphia, my wife and me and our kids, for the funeral, we were able to take stock of not only the courage she showed in the way she died, but the wisdom in the way she lived. You know, she was had a very little way, what I call, referring to Saint Therese of Lisieux, the Catholic saint, who had a very humble way of living. There was Ruthie, my sister, a small town middle school teacher, a country girl who had never really left our hometown, but I saw the deep value and wisdom and beauty in her simple way of life and in the way the people of St. Francisville, of our town, had responded to their suffering. And it changed my heart. I told my wife, and she agreed, we have to move here. We have to be part of this. So we went back to Philly, picked up our kids, and moved back to a little town of 1,700 people on the Mississippi River.
Wow, it's an incredible story. How did Louisiana change how you write? Was this your first book?
No, it's my second book. I wrote a book about pop culture and politics called Crunchy Cons in 2006. But I've lived away from Louisiana most of my life, and even though I went to LSU, I worked at the Advocate in Baton Rouge, but then moved to the East Coast. And I noticed that wherever I would go, whether it's New York, Washington, Miami, Louisiana people, and Southern people more generally, would congregate together, and we'd start telling stories. And people from other parts of the U.S., they couldn't believe it. They'd sit there and they would listen, and they would think that we were making it up. But if you're from the South and you're from Louisiana, you know you're not making it up. So it was really great to learn how to tell stories, because I just learned listening to my dad and my uncle and all the Louisiana people, and to realize that we have something so special here in Louisiana. And it's so great to have come back and to have written a love letter to Louisiana, a state I never thought I would see again.
My book is called The World's Strongest Librarian. It's about me. I'm a librarian in Salt Lake City. I'm a performing strongman. I do a lot of the old circus stuff, so I'll probably wind up breaking things if anybody brings some tomorrow. I can bend horseshoes. I can tear things. I can roll up frying pans with my hands. I also teach self-defense. I really like to fight. It's a long story. It should be lively. I'm being interviewed by Emily Statt, and that's really all I care about. That's why I came, is to see what she would ask me.
Well, that is very interesting. All of this is in your new book that you've written?
Yeah, it is. And the main focus is the Tourette syndrome. I have the most extreme case of Tourette syndrome most of my neurologists have ever seen. You're not seeing it right now because I'm talking, and that's why I'm good at talking, because it's when I get a break. When Emily's talking tomorrow, you'll see a freak show, so come.
Wow, that is most fascinating. Well, what are you reading right now as a writer? You obviously and a librarian. So tell us, what are you reading right now?
I spent 10 years counting down every day to Donna Tartt's latest book, which is called The Goldfinch. It's finally out. It's 750 pages long, and I want to cry every day because I'm getting closer to finishing it. So The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt, and then I'll probably read it again, and then I'll beg her to write a book quicker than 10 years from now.
I'm reading a lot of memoir, and actually Josh was on my to-read list before I got the opportunity to interview him, and I've been reading a ton of nonfiction. I'm also reading Kelsey Cole's young adult series, which I find very interesting. It keeps me up late at night because it has zombie-like creatures in it.
Well, are you a writer as well as a reader?
I am. I'm working on a memoir actually about learning how to tango and what it's taught me about my relationships.